The NFL is a what have you done for me lately league, and this both benefits players greatly and hinders others severely at the same time. One mistake by a starter could change his career path for forever. There are of course exceptions, like hypothetically if Patrick Mahomes goes out and throws 17 or 18 interceptions this year and the Chiefs lose in the first round of the playoffs, he himself will be fine and have some time to correct that. But the same cannot be said for the subject of today's video. We're going to be discussing a couple of NFL quarterbacks whose future relies on what they do in 2022, and if they do not perform to the level the franchise wants them to, well, their career as they currently know it will change. And there is a lot to dive into, so without further ado, let's begin. And we're going to start today's video with Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. Daniel is heading into his fourth season as an NFL quarterback, and there's been times where he's flashed and looked like a very good quarterback, and then simply put, there's been other times where he's been a meme, such as tripping and falling on what should have been a near 90-yard touchdown run, or just bonehead decisions throwing the football. The Giants, for the most part, and credit former GM Dave Gettleman for this, as crazy as that sounds, but the Giants, all things considered, did a solid, but not elite, but a solid job of building around Daniel. Sure, some of the receivers and pieces aren't as good as other units in the NFL, but they did a decent enough job for a young quarterback to play in. Sterling Shepard is a solid receiver, Evan Ingram wasn't a bad tight end, and Saquon Barkley, when healthy, and that's a big win there, but is a good running back. They also drafted Kadarius Toney with a first-round pick, who I do think will be a solid player for them if he plays, that is, and they added Kenny Golladay in free agency. But like Daniel, all of the weapons have subsequently not performed to their maximum ability for the Giants, and that has to change in 2022, because if it doesn't, then Daniel Jones will start to have a Jameis Winston type role, where he's backing up veterans near the end of their career, and he's searching for a long-term starting job. What has not been discussed too much across the NFL media is the certainty or the probable guarantee that head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen have if Daniel does not work out. Obviously, Brian and Joe went into their interviews and probably said all of the right things about him and that they want him to work out and for him to be the guy. However, I'm sure they also had a stipulation within this and with the Maras that pretty much said, look, if he doesn't work out, we still have our jobs, right? And I fully believe the Maras said yes, and you will be guaranteed a job in 2023 with or without Daniel Jones. And for Daniel, his long-term starting career rides on this because of the lack of commitment the upper management of the New York Giants have to him. They know they're good in the long run. If there's an ounce of hesitation from Daboll and Schoen after 2022, Daniel will be replaced because for the lack of quarterbacks this past draft class had, with Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, and the gang, 2023 is the exact opposite, and it is not limited to just Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. There is a good chance we have 7 quarterbacks taken in the first round next year, and you better believe the New York Giants will be one of those teams if Daniel Jones does not play at or near a Pro Bowl level. And for Daniel, I don't think work ethic has ever been the problem. I believe it's more of a mental thing, as it's insanely difficult to be able to read a defense, process what defenses are doing, and throw the ball on a line to exactly where it needs to be, all within 2 or 2.5 seconds, while 300-pound linemen run at you full speed. Remember, this isn't a job you see on Indeed, and if you have the qualifications, you apply along with thousands of other people. There are only 32 people in the world who do this job, and realistically 10 or 12 that do it at a great level. And for Daniel, the long-term status of his job and his job security rely on how he performs in 2022. Next up is Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and it's for a few but not exactly the same reasons, but it's not far off either. And my biggest concern entering the football season with Tua isn't that he doesn't have it or that he can't get the deep ball to Tyreek or any of that general nonsense. My biggest concern is having Mike McDaniel as his head coach and how he performs in year 1. And I loved the McDaniel hiring, please understand that. But Mike is from the Kyle Shanahan tree, and the most common thing with Kyle Shanahan in his own path is, does he have success? The answer to that is, of course, yes, but it generally takes a bit of time for the Shanahan coach teams to learn the offense and then implement that success on the field. Kyle was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta, and as we know, he was the OC during Matt Ryan's MVP season in 2016, but that was his second season under Kyle. And San Francisco, when Shanahan took over, is a perfect example of the length and the time it takes to implement. In 2017, the 49ers were not good, and they weren't in 2018 either, though at least to be fair, Jimmy G tore his ACL, and when your starting quarterback goes down, a lot of the time your season is over. But the 49ers were 8-24 over Kyle's first 2 years, and then they went to the Super Bowl in his third year coaching. And how this relates to Tua is, if they have to wait until even the second season under Mike McDaniel, I fear that time will run out on Tua's Dolphins career. There's already an insane amount of pressure for Tua heading into 2022 because of the Tyreek trade, because of the Teron Armstead signing, because of the new head coach hire, and because of all of the other great quarterbacks in the AFC, and hell, even the two quarterbacks from Tua's 2020 draft class, that of course being Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. There are so many outside factors for Tua heading into 2022 that it honestly wouldn't surprise me if he quote-unquote fails because of just how much pressure there is on him entering this season. And to be clear, I never root for a player's failure just to be right or to validate myself or any of that bullshit, but I am worried for the guy, because if he doesn't perform, then there's pressure from the media and the questions of, Tua, Tyreek was wide open on the third and 8 play and you checked it down to Chase Edmonds. What were you thinking? And the whole nine. The bottom line is Tua needs to perform in 2022, and there is arguably, though not definitely, the most amount of pressure on him out of any of the quarterbacks in the vaunted AFC. From two East Coast teams, we go across the country to the last state that was admitted prior to Alaska and Hawaii, and that's Arizona, to discuss the Cardinals and quarterback Kyler Murray. Kyler is a player that, depending who you ask, is either extremely overrated because people try and compare him to players he's not, like the younger quarterbacks, or he's compared to players he is better than, and it's a silly conversation. But the pressure entering 2022 isn't just on Kyler's shoulders, and there's a lot on Cliff Kingsbury as well, as if they have another hot start like they did last year, in which the 2021 Arizona Cardinals started out 7-0, and for that matter 9-2, yet finished the season 11-6 and got smoked by 23 points in their only playoff game to the eventual champion Los Angeles Rams. The common theme for Cliff Kingsbury coach teams is starting out hot and not being able to get the job done. However, if they start out 4, 5, or 6-0 again, they'll do all of this without their number one wide receiver and one of the best receivers in all of football in DeAndre Hopkins, and there will be an insane amount of speculation for the Cardinals that I think would only be setting them up for long-term failure. It would be to a degree similar to Patrick Mahomes a couple of years ago, where we saw him win a Super Bowl at age 24, and not that he's disappointed since, because Patrick hasn't, but everyone wants to build the next thing up and have this player be the next Tom Brady and Patriots for that matter, and to this day Patrick and the Chiefs still have one ring. And my point is, for this to be a truly successful season, the Arizona Cardinals have to, at minimum, win a playoff game. And as crazy as this sounds, for the better of their team, they have to lose a couple of games in the first 7 or 8, because if they start out another season 9-1 or 11-2, 11-3, then finish 12-5 and drop a wild card game, they'd be better off starting a season 4-3 and finishing 11-6 and winning a wild card game and getting bounced in the divisional round of the playoffs by a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Green Bay Packers. But what I also fear within all of this is Kyler, understandably, I don't blame him for this, wants a new contract. They traded for a former teammate of Kyler's in Marquise Brown, and you don't make that trade to let Hollywood walk and waste a first-round pick in a season or two for Marquise Brown. So you're going to have a lot of money tied up in Kyler, Marquise, and DeAndre, and that's just 3 positions on this roster in which you already let Chandler Jones walk. Kyler has been at times a very good quarterback, never elite or top tier by any means, but he has to be more consistent this year and has to be the guy. I don't think the floor for Kyler is as low as it may be for Daniel Jones, as I always think Murray will have a place to start, But if I were the Arizona Cardinals and they have another dud of a year, or a hot start to a year, then it quickly becomes a dud, the future is most definitely in question, and I don't know how you could convince yourselves to give Kyler $100+ million knowing he was already unhappy entering the season. I think the Cardinals, out of any of the teams in today's video, have the most boom or bust chance when everything is considered because of the investments they've made financially. And in 2022, it will very much be on Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it would truly mean the world. We're closing in on 41,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.